It was a quiet evening in a small town. The streets were almost empty, and the air was cold. The rain had just stopped, leaving the ground wet and shining under the weak streetlights. Most people had already gone home, closing their doors to the world outside. But one man was still awake, sitting in his small shop that sold simple things, including hot tea. The man's name was Daniel. He was not rich, not famous, and not powerful. He lived a simple life, serving tea to tired workers, students, and strangers who passed through the town. Daniel believed that even a small act of kindness could warm someone's heart. That was why he always kept his teapot ready, no matter how late it was. On that night, as Daniel was cleaning the counter, he noticed a figure standing across the street. The figure was a woman, dressed in strange clothes that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Her eyes were sharp yet filled with something heavy, like sadness mixed with wonder. She did not look like she belonged to this town, or even this world. Daniel watched her for a moment, then stepped outside. "Are you lost?" he asked gently. The woman did not answer at first. She only looked at him as if measuring his soul. Finally, in a soft voice, she said, "I am cold." Without hesitation, Daniel smiled. "Then you need a hot cup of tea." He guided her into the shop, offered her a chair, and poured steaming tea into a cup. The smell of herbs and warmth filled the air, simple but comforting. The woman stared at the rising steam as if it was something magical. She held the cup carefully, almost with fear. Then, very slowly, she brought it to her lips and drank. Her eyes widened, and for a brief moment, her face softened. "It is warm," she whispered, as if surprised by the feeling. Daniel chuckled. "That's the point of tea. It warms you when the world feels too cold." The woman nodded, still staring at the steam with deep fascination. Daniel noticed her hands. They were too smooth, too perfect, as if they had never touched real work. Her accent was strange, her movements careful, almost unnatural. But instead of asking questions, Daniel simply said, "You must have traveled far." The woman looked at him, and for the first time a small smile touched her lips. "Yes, farther than you can imagine," she said quietly. They sat in silence for a while. The only sound was the soft clink of the teacup. Daniel did not push her to explain. He simply let her sit in peace. He had seen many travelers before, each carrying stories too heavy to share. Sometimes silence was the kindest gift. But the woman could not stay silent forever. She looked around the little shop, the wooden shelves, the glowing kettle, the simple life contained in four walls. Then she said almost to herself, "You live so simply, yet you smile so easily." Daniel raised his eyebrows. "Life is simple if you let it be. People make it heavy when they chase too much." Her eyes grew distant, as if remembering something far away. "Where I come from, people chase more than you can imagine," she whispered. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "And does it make them happy?" She shook her head. "No, it makes them empty." The rain started again. Tapping softly on the windows, the woman took another sip of tea, holding the cup as if it was a treasure. Daniel thought it strange but beautiful, that someone could see magic in something so ordinary. It reminded him that small things could mean everything to the right person. Finally, the woman placed the cup down and looked directly into his eyes. Her gaze was sharp, almost too sharp for a human. "I must tell you something," she said. Her voice low and serious. Daniel tilted his head, waiting. The woman leaned closer and whispered, "I am not from your world." Daniel blinked, unsure if he heard correctly. She continued, her eyes glowing faintly. "I am not human. I came here from the stars." The shop felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier, the rain outside louder. Daniel did not laugh. He did not call her crazy. He simply stared at her calm, serious face, and deep inside, he felt that she was telling the truth. The teacup still sat between them, steam curling into the night air. A simple gift of tea had opened a doorway to a mystery larger than Daniel could ever imagine. And though he did not yet know it, his life was about to change forever. The little shop was quiet, but inside Daniel's heart there was a storm. He could not believe what he had just heard. The woman in front of him claimed she was not human. Her eyes glowed faintly. Her voice carried weight. And there was something in her presence that felt far beyond this world. Daniel wanted to ask 100 questions, yet his tongue felt heavy. The woman leaned back in her chair, holding the empty teacup with delicate fingers. She looked at him with calm patience, as if she had revealed such secrets before. Finally, Daniel gathered the courage to whisper, "If you are not human, Then who are you? Her lips curved into a faint smile, but it was not a smile of joy. It was a smile of someone tired, someone carrying too much. I am called Solari, she said slowly. I am an heir of the Vaer Dominion, a civilization older than your entire planet. Daniel blinked. The words meant nothing to him, yet they carried a weight that made his chest tighten. Solari continued, her tone almost casual. Across the stars, I own mines of rare metals, fleets of ships, even entire planets that send tribute to my name. Daniel stared in shock. Trying to imagine such a life, she was speaking of wealth beyond human understanding, riches that no king or empire on earth could dream of. But her face was not proud, her voice was not boastful. Instead, there was an emptiness in her eyes. Daniel finally spoke. Then why are you here? Why come to a small town on Earth when you already own so much? Solari placed the teacup down, her fingers lingering on the rim as if it grounded her. Because none of it means anything, she whispered. Her voice shaking slightly. Daniel frowned, confused. How can owning worlds mean nothing? She looked at him sharply, then softened. Because wealth cannot stop time, it cannot stop loneliness. It cannot create legacy. Her words hung in the air like heavy stones. She leaned closer, lowering her voice as if speaking a forbidden truth. I came to Earth because I'm searching for something money cannot buy. Daniel's mind raced. The idea of an alien billionaire searching for meaning in his tiny shop felt unreal, yet her eyes told him it was true. What is it you want? He asked quietly. Solari looked at him with deep sadness. I want a legacy, not built on gold or power, but on something that lasts in the hearts of others. The kettle whistled softly on the counter, reminding Daniel of the simple world around him. Here was a woman who could command galaxies, and yet she sat in his shop, longing for something he had always taken for granted. Daniel poured her another cup of tea without a word. Solari accepted it with a faint nod, as if grateful for the small ritual. You see, she began, her voice almost trembling, in my world, people fight endlessly for more ships, more power, more control. They build monuments of steel and glass, but none of it matters when they are gone. Daniel listened, his hands steady, his heart trying to understand. Solari's eyes glistened, not with pride but with sorrow. I have everything, yet I feel I have nothing. Daniel thought for a moment, then spoke softly. Maybe you're looking in the wrong place. Solari tilted her head, curious. And where should I look? Daniel gestured around them at the little shop, at the steam rising from the tea, at the quiet rain outside. In small things, he said. Kindness, family, friendship. The simple moments that make life worth living. For a long moment, Solari said nothing, her gaze fixed on the teacup. Then, slowly, a tear slipped down her cheek. She brushed it away quickly, as if ashamed. In all my travels, she whispered, no one has ever spoken to me like this. They only see my power, never my emptiness. Daniel felt a pang of sympathy. He realized that behind her alien wealth and strange beauty, she was lonely, terribly lonely. The silence stretched, filled only by the rain. Finally, Solari looked at him with new intensity. You gave me tea without asking for anything in return. Do you understand how rare that is in my world? Daniel shrugged. It was just tea. Solari shook her head, her voice firm. No, to me, it was more than tea. It was humanity itself. It was care without price. Her words startled him, but also warmed him for the first time. Daniel realized that what seemed ordinary to him was extraordinary to someone like her. Solari leaned forward, her eyes glowing brighter. Daniel, perhaps humanity is the legacy I have been searching for. The shop seemed to grow quieter, the air thick with unspoken meaning. Daniel did not yet know what she truly meant, but he felt the weight of her words. The simple act of kindness, a cup of tea, had reached farther than he could imagine, and now, the destiny of a lonely alien billionaire and a humble human man were beginning to intertwine. Outside, the rain slowed to a gentle drizzle, as if the world itself was listening. Solari raised her cup once more, drinking deeply, as if tasting hope for the first time in centuries. Her eyes met Daniel's, and though she was from the stars, in that moment she felt closer to humanity than ever before. The next morning, Daniel's shop opened as usual. The streets were still wet from last night's rain, and the smell of damp earth filled the air. Daniel arranged cups and plates, wiped the tables, and lit a small lamp in the corner. Everything looked normal. Yet nothing felt the same. Solari had stayed, quietly sitting by the window, her eyes following the people outside. She watched children running with laughter, their shoes splashing in puddles. She saw a mother carrying groceries, her child clinging to her arm. She saw two old men arguing about a broken bicycle, then laughing at themselves. To Silari, every small detail was strange and beautiful. Daniel brought her tea again, setting it gently on the table. "You have been staring outside for an hour," he said with a smile. "What do you see?" Silari's voice was soft, thoughtful. "I see life unpolished, unplanned, yet full of meaning." Her eyes followed a little boy who fell, scraped his knee, and was lifted up by his sister. "In my world, weakness is hidden, mistakes are punished, but here, even pain seems to connect people." Daniel sat across from her, curious. "You sound like you are studying us." She turned her gaze to him, her eyes serious. "I am, because you humans confuse me." Daniel raised his eyebrows. "Confuse you how?" Silari lifted the cup, letting the steam touch her face. "You have so little compared to what I own. Yet you share so freely, you laugh even when you suffer. You care even when there is no reward." Daniel thought about it, then shrugged. "Maybe that's what keeps us alive. Without kindness, the world would feel too heavy." Silari tilted her head. Considering his words, "In the Vair Dominion," she said slowly, "kindness is seen as weakness. Generosity is seen as foolishness. Yet here you treat it as strength." Her voice grew almost desperate. "Why?" Daniel leaned forward, his hands folded on the table. "Because we don't have much else," he answered simply. "We don't have fleets or planets. We don't have eternal life, so we hold on to the small things. A smile, a meal, a hand on the shoulder. Those are our treasures." Silari fell silent, his words sinking deep into her heart. For someone who had built empires, who had counted wealth in suns and stars, the idea of valuing a smile or a hand felt both small and enormous. She whispered almost to herself, "Perhaps the greatest power is not in owning, but in giving." The shop door opened and a young girl entered, holding a few coins tightly in her hand. She looked nervous as she asked Daniel for a single piece of bread. Daniel smiled warmly, gave her 2 pieces, and pushed the coins back. "Take it." "No charge today," he said. The girl's face lit up. She thanked him and ran out. Silari watched every moment, her eyes wide. "You gave her food and refused payment," she said in disbelief. Daniel shrugged again. "She needed it more than I needed the coins." Silari leaned back, stunned. "In my world, no one gives without demand. Everything has a price," Daniel smiled faintly. "That's why your world feels empty." Her chest tightened at his words, because deep inside she knew it was true. She remembered her grand halls of crystal, filled with servants who bowed but never cared. She remembered her fleets of ships, silent, powerful, but cold. She remembered parties where nobles spoke in honeyed tones. Yet each word was a blade waiting for betrayal. And now here she was in a wooden shop, watching a man give bread for nothing but kindness. And it shook her to her core. She asked quietly, "Do you think this is legacy? These small acts?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, because people remember kindness more than power. Money fades, but kindness lives in stories, in memories, in hearts." Silari closed her eyes, letting the idea wash over her. A strange warmth spread inside her chest, unfamiliar yet comforting. She realized she was beginning to envy humans, not for their possessions, but for their ability to find joy in small things. As the day went on, Silari asked more questions. "Why do humans help strangers when they may never meet again? Why do you sing songs about sadness and yet feel happy listening? Why do you risk your lives for love when love can break you?" Daniel answered each question with patience, sometimes with wisdom, sometimes with humor, because to him, these questions were not strange. They were simply life. By evening, Silari sat in silence, overwhelmed by everything she had seen. Children still played outside. Couples still walked hand in hand. Laughter still floated in the air. She whispered softly, "Perhaps humanity is poor in wealth, but rich in spirit." Daniel smiled at her words. "That is the kind of wealth worth keeping." Silari looked down at her empty cup, her reflection trembling in the tea stains. She realized something she had never thought possible. For all her riches, for all her planets, she had never felt as full as she did in this small shop. And though she had come to study humanity, she wondered if perhaps humanity was beginning to change her. The rain started again, soft and gentle, as if the sky was agreeing. Silari leaned her head against the window, watching the droplets slide down the glass. Her voice was almost a whisper. "Maybe my legacy is not in building more, but in learning from you." Daniel did not reply. He only poured her another cup of tea, and in that simple act, Solari felt she had been given something greater than any crown of stars. The days passed slowly, and Solari kept returning to the little shop. At first, Daniel thought she would leave, vanish into the night like a strange dream. But every morning she came back, sitting by the window, drinking tea and watching the world. She never said it directly, but Daniel could tell she was searching for something in every laugh, every handshake, every tear she saw outside one evening. When the lamps burned low and the streets were quiet, Solari finally asked a question that carried the weight of stars. "Daniel, do you believe legacy is only for kings and heroes? Or can even a simple man leave one behind?" Daniel thought for a long time, then answered slowly, "Legacy is not about size. It's about memory. Even a simple man can leave something behind if he touches the hearts of others." Solari's eyes glowed faintly at his words, and a strange decision formed inside her mind. The next day she began her test. When Daniel opened the shop, he found a small object placed neatly on the counter. It was a crystal unlike anything he had ever seen, glowing softly with a light that seemed alive. Solari sat nearby, watching him carefully. "That crystal," she said calmly, "is worth more than every building in this town. With it you could buy lands, riches, and power." Daniel stared at it, then looked back at her, confused. "Why would you give this to me?" he asked. Solari leaned forward, her voice steady. "Because I want to see what you will do with it." For a moment, temptation stirred inside Daniel's heart. The thought of wealth, of freedom from struggle, of building something bigger than his little shop. But then he shook his head and pushed the crystal back toward her. "I don't need this. It's beautiful, yes, but it would only bring trouble." Solari studied him closely, her expression unreadable. "You refuse it so easily," she whispered. "Do you not dream of more?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I dream, yes, but not of riches. My dream is to live kindly, to leave people warmer than I found them, and money does not help with that." That night, Solari placed something else in the shop, a device silver and smooth, glowing with strange symbols. "This machine," she explained, "could give you knowledge beyond your entire species. It could make you smarter than your greatest leaders." Daniel touched it carefully, feeling its strange hum, but again he shook his head. "Knowledge is good, but only if the heart stays kind. Too much knowledge without kindness can destroy." Solari's eyes narrowed, her mind racing. In her world, no one refused gifts like these. They would fight wars to own them. Yet here was a man turning them away as if they were nothing but dust. She could not understand it, and yet deep inside she admired it. The final test came under the moonlight. Solari revealed her true form, her skin glowing faintly with silver light. Her eyes burning with the power of galaxies. She raised her hand, and in the air appeared a vision of entire planets bowing to her command. "Daniel," she said, her voice echoing with power, "I can give you an empire. I can make you a ruler. Kings would kneel to you, and your name would never be forgotten." The air trembled with her words, and the vision shimmered with promise. Daniel stared at it, his heart pounding. The thought of power was terrifying, yet strangely tempting. But then he looked at Solari, and he looked at the small wooden shop, and he thought of the children who came for bread, the laughter in the streets, the kindness that cost nothing. Finally, he shook his head, firm and calm. "I don't want to be remembered as a ruler," he said. "I want to be remembered as a good man." For the first time, Solari's expression broke. Her mask of calm shattered, her eyes softened, and her voice trembled. "Why, Daniel, why do you keep refusing everything I offer?" Daniel smiled gently. "Because legacy isn't measured in power, or gold or empires. It's measured in the love you leave behind. And that doesn't need treasures." Solari felt her chest tighten, and for the first time in centuries, she did not know what to say. Her entire life she had believed wealth was strength, power was meaning, and empires were legacy. But here was a simple man with nothing but a teapot and a kind heart, teaching her that she had been wrong. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the soft whistle of the kettle. Finally, Solari whispered, "You speak as if you already carry a legacy." Daniel chuckled. "Maybe, but it's not mine to see. It's for others to remember." Her eyes glistened, and she looked away, afraid that he might see her weakness. In her heart, something shifted. Something she had never felt before, perhaps, she thought. Legacy was not about what she gave to the stars, but about what she learned from a single human. Outside, the night deepened and the world felt both fragile and infinite. Solari sat quietly, her heart heavy yet strangely light. The test she thought would prove human greed had only proven the opposite. And now she began to wonder. Perhaps humanity held the answer she had been searching for all her life. The town slept in silence, but above the quiet streets, the stars were not still, far beyond the clouds. Ships moved in the dark of space. Silent hunters searching for their prey. Solari had tried to hide on Earth, disguising herself in human skin. But her absence from the Dominion had not gone unnoticed. There were those among her kind who feared her choices, feared what would happen if she gave her power and wealth to a small and unpredictable species like humanity. One night, while Daniel prepared his teapots, he noticed Solari staring at the sky, her face pale, her hands clenched. "What's wrong?" he asked softly. She did not answer at first, her eyes glowing faintly as if listening to whispers only she could hear. Finally she whispered, "They have found me." Daniel frowned. "Who has found you?" Solari turned toward him, her voice low and heavy. "Others of my people, rivals, enemies, those who believe humanity is unworthy. They will try to stop me, and you, Daniel, are now in danger because of me." Daniel set the teapot down, his heart racing, but he did not step back. Instead, he said firmly, "Then we face them together." Solari shook her head quickly. "You don't understand. These are beings who can command armies. Their ships can crush cities. They do not care for your kind. They will burn everything to stop me." But Daniel only crossed his arms. "Then all the more reason I won't let you face them alone." That night the shop felt colder, shadows stretched longer, and the rain outside carried an edge of warning. Solari tried to stay calm, but the truth weighed heavily on her. For centuries she had fought battles for power, but never had she feared losing something as much as she feared losing Daniel. He was not a soldier, not a king, just a man with kindness. Yet he was braver than anyone she had ever known. The next day the signs grew stronger. Strange lights appeared in the sky, faint glimmers that humans thought were falling stars, but Solari knew better. She recognized the pattern of patrol ships, scanning, searching. At night she could feel their signals pressing against her mind. Sharp and cold like knives, her enemies were close. And time was running out. Daniel noticed her growing restless, her hands shaking slightly when she thought he was not looking. "Solari," he said, "you've faced worse before, haven't you?" She gave a bitter smile. "Yes, but I always face them alone this time." "I cannot," Daniel touched her hand gently, steady and warm. "Then let me stand with you. I don't have power or riches, but I can give you loyalty. Sometimes that's stronger than any weapon." Her chest tightened at his words, and for the first time she allowed herself to believe that maybe humanity could be her true legacy. But the danger was real, and it would not wait that evening. As they closed the shop, a shadow fell across the doorway. A tall figure stepped inside, not fully human, his form flickering faintly as if reality struggled to hold it. Solari's eyes widened. She whispered one word. "Hunter." The figure's voice was deep, mechanical, echoing in the small shop. "Solari of the Veyar Dominion, you are ordered to return. Your experiments with these creatures end tonight." Daniel stepped in front of her without thinking, his hands trembling but his voice steady. "She's not going anywhere." The hunter tilted his head, studying him with cold curiosity. "A human defending her," it said. "How amusing. How pointless." Solari's body glowed faintly with silver light, her disguise breaking under stress. Her voice rang with power. "Leave him out of this. Your fight is with me." But the hunter only sneered. "No, your weakness is him, and so he will be part of it." Daniel's heart pounded, but he refused to step aside. The tension grew thick. The small shop suddenly a battlefield of wills. The hunter's body flickered. Preparing to strike, Solari raised her hand, energy gathering like fire. Daniel stood between them, the simplest of shields. Armed with nothing but courage. "Stop," Solari cried, her voice breaking. "If you harm him, I will destroy everything you hold dear." For a moment the hunter paused, calculating. Then it gave a low growl and stepped back. "This is not over," it hissed, its form vanishing like smoke into the night. The silence that followed was heavier than stone. Solari sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. Daniel knelt beside her, his voice calm but firm. "We'll get through this together." Her eyes shone with tears. And she whispered, "You don't understand." "Daniel, that was only one. Many more are coming." The shop felt smaller, the world outside darker. But in that moment Daniel did not waver. He placed his hand over hers, steady and warm. Then let them come, he said softly. I may not have weapons, but I won't let you face them alone. Solari looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time in her long life, she felt fear not for herself, but for someone else, and hidden beneath that fear, a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, humanity was not weak, but stronger than even the stars believed. Outside, the sky flickered with distant lights, silent warnings of battles yet to come. But inside the little shop, two souls sat together, holding on to something greater than power, something their enemies could never understand, something small, human, and unbreakable. The night after the hunter appeared, Solari could not sleep. She sat by the window, her glowing eyes fixed on the distant stars. Each one reminded her of the empire she had left behind, of the countless worlds she owned but never truly loved. And now here she was in a small human town, worried not about fleets or planets, but about one ordinary man who had stood in front of her without fear. Daniel brewed tea even though it was late. The simple ritual calmed him. He placed a cup near her and said softly, "You've been awake all night." Solari glanced at him, her voice low. "I keep asking myself why you stood against the hunter. You could have died." Daniel sipped his tea calmly. "Because some things are worth more than living in fear." Her chest tightened at his words. For centuries she had seen people betray each other for power, for money, for survival. Yet this man risked everything for her, even though she had nothing to give him. No treasure, no crown, only herself. It was a loyalty she had never known, a loyalty money could never buy. The next morning, she decided to test him once again. Not with jewels or power, but with truth. She told him of her vast empire, how she could turn Earth into a jewel of the Dominion. She promised him ships, cities of crystal, technology that could cure every disease and end hunger forever. She painted a picture of paradise if only humanity would kneel and accept her gifts. Daniel listened quietly, then placed his cup down. "That all sounds beautiful," he said slowly. "But it sounds like a bargain, not a gift." Solari frowned. "A bargain?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, because once we depend on you for everything, we'll forget what it means to be human. We'll chase greed instead of kindness, and we'll lose the very thing you admire in us." Her breath caught. His words cut sharper than any blade. "You mean humanity would refuse paradise?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel looked at her firmly. "Paradise without choice is just another prison. We must choose our own way, even if it's harder." Solari sat in silence, her heart pounding. For so long she had believed that power was the highest gift, that to give someone everything was the greatest kindness. But now she saw that true kindness was not control, but freedom, and humans, fragile as they were, valued freedom above all. Later that day, the townsfolk began whispering about strange lights in the sky. Daniel pretended not to hear, but he knew what it meant. More of Solari's enemies were coming. Solari heard too, but instead of fear, she felt something new rising inside her, determination. She had spent centuries building empires with gold. Now she wanted to build something with trust. That evening she walked with Daniel through the market. The stalls were filled with fruits, bread, and laughter. The smell of roasted food filled the air. Children chased each other. Couples shared quiet smiles. Old friends argued and forgave. Solari absorbed it all. Each moment a treasure, she whispered. "This is what I want, not riches, not monuments, this. The living heart of humanity." Daniel smiled. "Then you already know your answer." Solari turned to him, her eyes glowing softly. "But will humanity choose the same? Or will your people chase my riches and forget themselves?" Daniel laughed gently. "We are flawed, Solari. We make mistakes. We fight, we get greedy, but we also forgive, we also love. And when the choice matters most, we find our way back to kindness." Her chest warmed, and for the first time she believed it might be true. She thought of the girl Daniel had fed without asking for coins. The laughter of children, the touch of human loyalty. These things were small, yet they carried more power than her fleets, more meaning than her crowns that night. As the sky flickered with the glow of incoming ships, Solari stood with Daniel outside the shop. She turned to him and said, "I have decided. I will not use my wealth to rule. I will use it to protect, not to own, but to serve, not to command, but to shield." Daniel looked at her, surprised. "You would give up everything?" Solari shook her head. "No, I'm not giving it up. I am giving it meaning." Above them, thunder rolled through the sky was clear. The sound of approaching ships. Solari's enemies were coming, but she was no longer afraid. Because now she had something stronger than fear, stronger than wealth, stronger even than her empire. She had found humanity's strength, and she had chosen to stand with it. Daniel touched her arm, his voice calm but firm. Whatever comes, we face it together. Her glowing eyes met his, and for the first time in centuries, Solari smiled not out of pride, but out of hope. The night carried danger, but in their hearts there was a choice that no enemy could take away, a choice for loyalty, for kindness, for humanity itself. And in that choice, Solari realized, lay the true legacy she had been searching for all her life. The sky above the little town glowed with strange light, not the light of stars nor the soft moon, but the sharp glow of ships descending through the clouds. The people of the town looked up, pointing, whispering, afraid. Daniel stood in front of his shop, Solari beside him, her eyes glowing brighter than ever before. The air trembled as the first ship hovered above, its shape like a dark blade cutting the night. More followed, forming a circle in the sky. Silent, watching, threatening, Solari took a deep breath, her voice calm but heavy. This is the moment, Daniel, I must choose. My empire or my legacy? Daniel looked at her steadily. Then choose what your heart tells you. The largest ship opened and a voice echoed through the air. Metallic and cold, Solari of the Vair Dominion. Surrender now, return to your throne, abandon these creatures. The voice shook the buildings, rattled the glass, made children cry. But Solari did not move. Instead, she stepped forward, her silver light wrapping around her like armor. She raised her voice clear and strong. I will not return. I have found something greater here, something your riches cannot touch. The voice growled. You would throw away an empire for these fragile beings? Solari lifted her chin, her eyes burning with fire. Yes, because they carry what we have forgotten. Kindness, loyalty, love, these are the true treasures. And I will protect them. The crowd below gasped. Though they did not understand all her words, they felt the power in them. Daniel stepped beside her, though he had no weapon. No shield, only his courage. The ships above stirred, beams of light shifting, preparing for war. But Solari lifted her hand, and the air shimmered with her power. Enough, she commanded, her voice echoing across the night. If you strike this world, you strike me, and I swear I will tear down every stone of your empire. The ships paused. The silence stretched, then the voice answered. You would abandon eternity for a single world? Solari's voice grew soft but unshakable. Eternity without meaning is nothing. I choose legacy, not power. The ships trembled, then slowly pulled back into the clouds, fading like shadows. The sky grew quiet again. Leaving only the stars, the people of the town stared in silence, then began to cheer, not fully knowing what had happened. But feeling safe once more, Daniel turned to Solari, his voice low. You just risked everything. Solari looked at him, her eyes wet with tears. No, Daniel. I finally gave everything meaning. She reached into her cloak and brought out a small object, a sphere glowing faintly with silver light. This, she said softly, is the heart of my empire. Whoever holds it controls fleets, riches, and worlds. Daniel stepped back in shock. Why are you showing me this? She placed it gently into his hands. Because I will not rule with it anymore. I give it to you not to command but to guard, as a symbol of trust between my kind and yours. Daniel stared at the sphere, glowing like a star, his hands trembling. I can't take this, he whispered. Solari smiled faintly. You already have when you gave me tea. You gave me something greater than wealth, now I give you this. So the legacy begins with you. The weight of her gift was not in its power, but in what it meant. It meant trust, it meant unity. It meant that one act of kindness had changed the path of two worlds. Daniel closed his hands around the sphere, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian. He looked at Solari. What will you do now? Solari turned to the stars, her eyes soft, her voice calm. I will stay, not as a ruler, not as a stranger, but as someone who finally belongs. Daniel smiled. Then welcome home. Her chest filled with warmth. The kind of warmth no empire had ever given her, for the first time in her long life. She felt complete. The town slowly returned to normal. The whispers of the strange night spread like fire. Children spoke of silver light. Adults argued whether it was dream or truth. But Daniel and Solari knew. The truth was bigger than any story. The truth was that kindness had changed the fate of stars. One evening, as they sat together in the shop, Solari lifted her cup of tea. She looked at Daniel with soft eyes and said, You gave me tea, but what you really gave me was a reason to believe again. Daniel raised his own cup, smiling gently. And you gave us a future we never imagined. The steam rose between them, simple, warm, alive, and though ships might return, and dangers might rise again, their choice was already made. It was not power, not money, not crowns or empires, it was humanity, kindness, and legacy. And as the stars watched silently above, Solari whispered one last vow. My wealth may fade, my empire may crumble, but this choice, this gift, will outlive us all.